Well, I really appreciate all of you showing up. This was really kind of going to be a trial run of a presentation that I've thought about doing. I haven't done one of these for about 6 months. The last ones I did were at the National Cohousing Conference in Washington, D.C. in June. And I've spent the last 20 years of my life trying to figure out how does all this stuff fit together, especially related to trying to create a more sustainable culture. We all recognize that we're living in some rather challenging times now, and they're very frustrating times when you start to think about the impact that the human race is having on the planet, or at least on our ability as a species to last on this planet. And at the same time, our institutions that we've always relied on, everybody from the government to science and technology to business and commerce to religion, none of them seem to be doing a whole hell of a lot about it. And it makes it more than interesting. Pogo, I think, had the right quote: "We have met the enemy and they is us." And I think Americans are now starting to look at our whole culture in different ways than they were at least 20 years ago when we started working with co-housing. And look, also there's a whole emergence of new opportunities and avenues that have started to surface not over that 20-year period. And what I wanted to do was to kind of put those thoughts together in a hopefully reasonably short presentation, and then get reaction from you guys. And hopefully we can have a discussion or something for those of you that have the time to stay. So when we talk about sustainability, and Georgette, you can flip that, especially relative to how we live and where we live, there's three components that I think we recognize. There's economic, social, and environmental. It's not just about saving energy, and it's not just about surviving, our economy surviving, but there's a significant social component. This is a shot of Nevada City co-housing, their common house, and they have they're basically a net zero electric community. The one thing that I think, sustainability is really a term that kind of has become more common in the last 20 years, but I don't think it really resonates with us unless there's some emotional connection. There has to be a social aspect to it that really speaks to our personal betterment and our happiness. I don't know whether, I know some of you saw the Happiness movie. Who saw that movie when it was here in town a couple of weeks ago? It's a great documentary of what the psychologists and some of the professionals have learned about human happiness, and then there's a lot in it about different cultures all over the world that they've measured happiness. And I think it's part of a transition that we're starting to see, where people are beginning to look at things in a slightly different way. What is it that really makes a difference to us? So you can. So David Wan lives at Harmony Village co-housing and runs the community garden. But he's an author. He's written the book The New Normal and also Suburbia. And it's really talking about the transition that he's hoping to stimulate and that is occurring. And we're starting to see this transition, I think, in a lot of different ways. There's a whole transition movement that started with transition towns in England, and now we've got some of them here in the United States. I think Oberlin, Ohio has got a whole transition component to it. There's almost every place in the United States now is doing things like reestablishing farmers markets and looking at local food culture and really turning back to the us that Pogo's talking about. This is our Boulder Farmers Market. Is there anybody here? How many have been to the Boulder Farmers Market? They're here. Good. You have to be from out of town to miss it, you know, because this is a center of activity, and especially in the summer in Boulder, where you have a very successful farmers market, and through that, I think it really speaks to the sustainability in three ways: in the economic, social, and environmental. Because what you realize, and you can flip to the next one, that a great deal of what the sociologists call social capital is being created at this little institution that happens a couple times a week in the summer, and it's because of this complex mix of people coming together. It's not just about coming to buy your vegetables. I mean, there's a whole experience when that the farmer gets and selling it to the end consumer that he doesn't get when he's just putting the food in boxes and shipping it off to Safeway. And there's also all kinds of learning going on, all kinds of connections being made. If you go, you know, it isn't just about selling food. They've got everything under the sun, from the latest energy programs to whatever. And it becomes an institution. So when you start to talk about neighborhood community, I think the social capital is a significant factor, just like it is with farmers markets. And neighborhood is really our, when you look at the structure of how we connect with each other, and you know, and we do it in our immediate families, and then our immediate neighborhood is the next building block of kind of communal structure, and then we go into a larger cities, and we're all citizens of the United States, and we're Americans, and we live on the planet. But this particular building block, this fundamental one that's right, you know, right after our families, is one that I think our American culture, especially in Western culture, has pretty much ignored or not given it much credit of having any real significant value. So it's sort of a neglected link. The other thing that neighborhood does is it really creates a sense of place that resonates within us. And it's that same thing I was talking about earlier with if you want sustainability to really work, it's got to resonate. When they studied, you know, the psychologists studied the happiness, it's really what's happening inside your brain that makes a difference. It's the dopamine that is being created. You know, I mean, Timothy Leary had it partly right. He just wasn't using the right stuff. You know, and that's what really makes a difference. Well, this is the same thing when you talk about sense of place, where we all have special places that really mean to us, something to us. If you're standing at the edge of Grand Canyon, you get a real sense of place. Your neighborhood, especially if it's done right, does it. This is a pedestrian street in one of the early Danish co-housing communities. This is where I live, and some of the other, a few of the other folks here. This is our little neighborhood. We've got 16 acres or 16 units on 1 acre of ground around a common space that looks like this. And this, the fact that we are in it together, and we run it together, and we do things to make it better together, creates a unique sense of place that does resonate in all of us. So getting back to the American dream, and I'm not going to belabor this because this the type of slide the architects show all the time. But what I wanted to point out, the house up here in the right-hand corner is actually a house that our company built about 15 years ago in Louisville over here. They were building on half-acre lots. It was about $300,000 house. Today it's worth well over $1 million. The percentage of people that can really afford that American dream is not that great.
1%.
Yeah, that's the one. It might be. And it's in a great location. They can walk to town and that sort of thing. So this is the kind of thing that we evolved out of trying to have everybody have their own version of the luxury house on the hill. So Georgette, you want to flip? So one of the points that I wanted to make with the presentation is there are new models that have evolved. Actually, some of this stuff has been cooking for my whole lifetime, but new urbanism probably really started to gain some importance in the last 20 years. And it's basically a way of creating neighborhoods that speak to community, where people, instead of the slides we just saw, people when they go out of their house, the streets are very walkable, the cars are in the back, off alleys, there's something to see and do, and so they see each other a lot more. And there's mixed uses. Now, in the same time period, co-housing has risen in the United States, and this pocket neighborhood, which is a brand new book that Ross Chapin's done, has emerged.
Oregon, isn't it? They started in Oregon?
Yeah, Seattle. And deals with community at a smaller scale than new urbanism, but I'll show you how this interrelates. This book is just out. It just came out, I think, in June of this year, May or June. And I got all excited about it because what he's done is he's been able to show in just these small pockets of housing units that are surrounded by some common space that they share, and they're designed extremely well, that how they really make a difference in the degree of community that's created among the neighbors, and how the neighbors feel about it, and how their sense of place is affected. So we got excited enough about this, we bought a whole case of them. So if you we're selling them, and we give them out to people because I think it's a very good, it's a beautiful book to start out with, a good coffee table book. So what are the basic components of, if you're going to design a neighborhood for community? I think there's, one way to look at it is there's two basic elements. One is the physical design, which is a lot of what new urbanism is about, and a lot of what we've been talking about is how do you structure the houses and the open spaces and the places where the design will facilitate people getting connected and people feeling in a more positive way about where they live and how they live with each other. But there's also this social design, which I think co-housing has dabbled with more than any other group. How do you really connect people socially beyond just a good environment? So this has been pretty well neglected or given little value. People are really starting to value well-designed communities. This is a pedestrian street in Holland, I think. But when you do it at that scale, people come out and they relate to each other. So this is Wonderland Hill, which is a development that we actually planned in the 1970s. And it was designed, at least I can claim now, was designed for sustainable community. And the elements in it that really make it work, and it's a really good example because, and there's a number of these type of communities around Boulder. Boulder has been, leading in the country in terms of creative planning, but the things that really make Wonderland work are the walkability. The housing was clustered, and this was actually done through a whole neighborhood protest that was almost as bad as the Washington, because originally the plan was 6 units to acre, and we had a lot more density. It was a lot more like the Holiday neighborhood is today, and after the neighbors did a petition drive, and then we went through that at about 2 years, and at that time I was dumb enough to even take it to court, and then we went back and got it reapproved at 3 1/4 units per acre. But we said, the hell with them, we're still going to cluster the housing. And so we ended up with a lot of open space. And if you go there today, there's walkways and bikeways through it all. And it's a very attractive place for people to come from all over, not just the neighbors. And I think that really has created a real much greater sense of community. The other thing that was done here, and you can see it duplicated in other developments around town, is by creating small pockets of swimming pool, tennis courts, a little clubhouse here, another one here, another one over there, without huge quantities of people or houses like several hundred units on each one. It forced people to get together with their immediate neighbors and figure out how to manage them, for one thing, because these were self-managed associations. And that in itself, here's where the social part starts to begin to come into play with the planning. So this was an early version before new urbanism, but had a lot of the same components. So when co-housing comes along, in the late 1980s, it was very definitely designed as a neighborhood that speaks to community. The basic design, this is the Harmony Co-Housing Common House patio, and you can tell this is their common greens in the middle. The cars are all off to the side. The whole idea is that people will see each other coming and going, even to get to their cars, that there's an attractive place for them to hang out like this. And the kitchens are typically on the towards this community side, and then there's a real effort to balance privacy and community. So we get a community side on the back side of the houses. There might be their living rooms and maybe a bedroom, and a little private yard area. And that was the basic concept behind co-housing. It was intentional design for community. And this is again where Brownie and I live at Silver Sage, and this is our outdoor little courtyard, and it gets used for all kinds of things, from a music concert to barbecues to just plain gardening, and all of that has a significant community aspect to it. And then we have a common house, which is typical co-housing, where we share a really attractive indoor spaces. This is our kitchen. We have meals free 2 nights a week in the dining area. This is a sitting area. We've got a media room. We've got more stuff than we ever need. And then one of the important elements in our community, and it's true I think in nearly every co-housing community, is centers around food. And here you can start to see where, I mean, as humans, food are, this is basic. That's how life works, but we get a real nourishment of body and soul out of the whole concept of sharing food together, cooking together. These are shots from our holiday party last year, I think. So what makes a community-based neighborhood? I think a true community-based neighborhood needs to have a shared vision where the neighbors actually have convinced each other that they need to believe in something. And we learned early on, working with co-housing groups, that it was almost every one of them right away went to, well, we want to make a difference. We want our community to be more sustainable. We want to live a more sustainable lifestyle, more energy efficient, all that kind of stuff. And then everybody kind of buys into that as a vision. But there's other visions. You can have a vision of happiness, I think, and make these communities work Well, the other thing are the clustered homes around some kind of shared open space, green area that gets shared together. The balance, like I said, the balance between private and community spaces, their utilization of the shared facilities. If you got them there and nobody's using them, or half the people don't use them, that doesn't promote community. So the more participation you can get among neighbors, the better. So being community focused, where you're really emphasizing interaction between neighbors, that's why eating together is a great thing to do. And even in a neighborhood that doesn't have, isn't co-housing, a pocket neighborhood, having a barbecue once a month, or having some kind of a rotating dinner is a really good idea. And then I've felt more and more as I've worked with co-housing the last several years that even though everybody looks at it and says, oh, you mean we got to run this place ourselves? This is the glue that really makes it work from a community standpoint, is the fact that people are getting together and figuring out how to make it not only operate, but make it better for everyone. The whole process of participation was kind of built into the early co-housing models, because Katie and Chuck, who brought it to the United States, and Catherine McCammett and Charles Durrett, they were architects, and they figured, oh, okay, well, how do we get these things going? Well, we'll have programming, and we'll basically have collaborative design with the people that are going to live there. We don't want them to get too far out of control, but we can program with them. And so workshops like these were common, and this is one that Katie didn't come. This was actually our Washington Village one. And the other thing that we've learned is that diversity really generates social capital. And having a diverse mix of people in a community that really bring different interests and skills and talents is really critical to its success. Every community that I've worked with always has at least one tech geek. And this guy here in Arizona, he was head of the computer lab for the astrophysics department of the University of Arizona. And this was 20 years ago almost. He figured out that instead of everybody paying $50 a month to be on the internet, that he could run it all through one and everybody could pay $3 a month. And and he was so proud of it. And at that time, it took all this equipment to do that. Of course, technology has changed, but those kind of people are really appreciated in a neighborhood. So are the gardeners. We have beautiful, you can go to almost any community and they have beautiful grounds and gardens. There's always an element, a workshop and crafts element that enhances the place. And then, of course, here's Henry cooking with Arthur. Cuisine, eating well. So Annie Russell really did this graph, and I've used it on what it takes to create a successful neighborhood community. And this was really the one we did for Silver Sage. So, but the three important elements for every community were community spirit, and this is the kind of the social side of it, management, and then maintenance. And it's important that the neighbors all are engaged in this in some way that inspires them. And then having I call this a vision. In our case, we called it community support for aging was our vision because we were doing the first senior co-housing community. I'm not so sure that that we shouldn't change that to community support for happiness. Don't you think, Henry? Yeah. Who cares about aging?
Aging scares people.
Yeah, we found that.
It happens to all of us.
But there's, we'll move to the next. I wanted to say a couple things about new urbanism and co-housing, because we've learned over 10 years ago, it was about 12 years ago, Jonathan Rose and Chuck Perry were, Jonathan's out of New York City and Chuck is here in Denver. had purchased the old Leach's amusement park, and they were going to do a breakthrough kind of new urbanist neighborhood. And Jonathan's brother-in-law happened to be Peter Calthorpe, who's renowned for starting the new urbanist movement along with Andres Duany. And so I knew Chuck and talked to him about, hey, maybe you should have a co-housing community in there. It might actually stimulate a higher level of community than just a standard new urbanist neighborhood. And there's a lot of affordable housing in this, because that's what they specialize in. And Jonathan loved the idea, and so did Calthorpe. So we got the Hearthstone site, and it was a block, a townhouse block that we just redid. The kids in Hearthstone did this, but the common house is on one corner on the street, and then there's a green in the middle. And this is about 20 units to the acre, with the cars all parked on the outside.
Before you change that slide, I was going to ask you for your definition of cultural creatives, because I've heard different ones. I'm just curious what your take on what a cultural creative is.
Well, the interesting thing, you know, cultural creatives, we identified as being the market for co-housing. Of course, they're a huge, you know, group, and there's only a few of them that really gravitated to co-housing, but they're basically progressive kinds of people that are thinking that they can actually make a difference, maybe in the way they live, or rather than just sort of accepting things. And I think that we're all going to be cultural creatives before this is over.
I've heard it's people that are dropping out of the keeping up with the Joneses, not buying the traditional consumeristic path in life. They're sort of dropping out of it.
Well, that's one, but there's a real broad, the guy that defined this was,
Ray.
who?
Ray.
Yeah, Paul Ray.
Paul Ray.
Yeah, and he actually spoke at one of the co-housing conferences. So this is the interior courtyard of Hearthstone, and if you can believe this, every unit in there sits on its own boundary. There's no stacked units in there, and yet they're at about 20 units per acre. And this is their common house, and their common house, we deliberately put it out, it addresses the street, it's right at the end of as you're driving through, you see it. So it becomes a prominent building, like a church does in neighborhoods. This is the community side, opening into the center of the community. This is a public side. Their common house gets used for all kinds of things. We promoted the idea that they would really make a difference in a larger neighborhood. We didn't know for sure whether that'd work, but it did. That's all I can tell you now, that they do. They model a community for the larger neighborhood. They're the biggest living room in the neighborhood, so a lot of the things, they run the community gardens and that sort of thing, because they are the more proactive cultural creatives in the group, but they're in the larger neighborhood. So this is our own Boulder version of co-housing and new urbanism, and I really jumped into this project because I thought it was so interesting. 8 years ago, we moved our office out here on Broadway, and we were able to be one of the 4 developers. The master developer was Boulder Housing Partners, which is really the Boulder Housing Authority. And they had, this is the old Holiday Drive-In site, which was really in Dogpatch out in North Boulder. And the Boulder Housing Partners could have gotten this approved as a standard single-family density of about 5 units to the acre. But because they were willing to double and in Boulder there's a requirement that 20% of the units have to be permanently affordable, or you can buy your way out of it. But rather than 20%, they doubled it to 40% and doubled the density to a gross density of 10 units to acre. And a lot of it is individual pockets that are as high as 20 units per acre. Both of our co-housing communities are closer to almost right at 20 units per acre. Wild Sage sits here, it's intergenerational. The first one we did, 34 units, and then Silver Sage is here with 16 units. And what's great about this neighborhood, it's true new urbanism, is that it's so walkable. I live here, and my office is there, and I hardly ever have had a car at the office. I just leave the car here, because I've got several different routes, but they always go through this park, and the park is almost always with people in it, kids with, people with their dogs. I mean, dogs are a big. This is American life is. Our sense of community all revolves around our dogs, but we've got restaurants and things up here. This is Proto's. It's underneath where my office is, and across the street is Spruce Confection. So it's a very walkable neighborhood. This stuff is starting to all come together, and this is Wild Sage and their little common green and their common house. And there's a ton of kids that live there. And then this is the interior of their common house. And this was a meeting that was going on for the larger neighborhood on talking about sustainability. So there's a deliberate kind of process going here that really makes it a significant transition in terms of people's awareness, and they're willing to participate in solving the problem rather than just worrying about it. And again, it's the largest living room in the neighborhood, so the co-housing really fits and plays an important role. So this is where, and I noticed Norbert walked in back here, this may be the next step, and we're seeing these emerge all over in and a lot of planning. We've got so much depression going on in the housing industry that not very many of them are actually emerging out of the ground yet, but this is getting closer. This is Geos in western Arvada, where Norbert is attempting to do a energy plus, literally. I mean, they'll produce more energy than they use, the housing, but there's a lot more to it than that. This is very good new urban design, and there's an agricultural element. There's a possibility of even raising crops in the floodplain along this bikeway that goes along the creek. There's 2 co-housing communities planned into it. So it's a comprehensive way of addressing a lot of the issues that are bubbling in our culture now. And we're seeing, I've seen probably a half a dozen of these kinds of projects starting to emerge. This is not the sort of thing that our mainstream production builders are real comfortable with yet, but I think we'll see this transition, especially as we come out of the recession. I wanted to just point out that in terms of energy efficiency, co-housing has always been the leading edge. When we did the very first co-housing community in Colorado, Nyland, it was branded by what was then Public Service, that most energy efficient new community built that year. And today, even though it's 20 years old, those homes are at about the same level as our new Boulder County and city code homes are in terms of their energy efficiency. And that was done with a cost increment of probably less than 5%. It took those people in that community that were really struggling with affordability. They had to get together and make the decision that they wanted to build the houses that much better. The same thing's true in Nevada City. The people here decided that are living there decided to put all the collectors on the roof and make it a net zero electric development. And they did that with their share of the residual or profit from their project. So I'm going to give a short plug here for Washington Village, because here's where we're trying to put all of these ideas together. And Washington Village is a LEED neighborhood development, which is a new kind of LEED. It was new when 2 years ago when we got it. It's not as new anymore. But it's really looking comprehensively at all of the aspects of sustainability, not just how efficient and how green the buildings are. And one of the attributes at Washington Village is this historic building is being preserved and converted into a number of high quality living units. what makes Washington Village a lead community and probably the most sustainable one that we've done yet is the neighborhood contributes significantly. This is the ideal walkable neighborhood, and it even has a store named after it. It's walkable, bikeable. The main bike path is on 13th Street. You can get to the downtown Pearl Street Mall in about a 10 or 15-minute walk, or 3 to 5 minutes on your bike. The skip bus goes right by the front of the place every 10 minutes on peak times. You don't need a car if you are brave enough to go without. The other thing that Washington Village has that speaks to this, just the same things that I've been talking about, is this courtyard in here is right off from where the Common House will be, just like it is at Silver Sage and Wild Sage. It has a public side on Broadway, and then the community side is back here for people dining. So that'll become a gathering place for the residents of Washington Village that will naturally stimulate community. And it's connected through to this park here that is right on the corner of 13th and Cedar, that these 6 single-family homes surround. They're a part of the community. So this is a sketch of the park. And when we started to look at these houses, this is an original drawing that we submitted to the city, and we thought they were just going to be, pretty much standard Boulder version, pretty expensive houses because the land is so expensive. But we started to think, well, maybe, and in collaboration with Norbert, maybe we could make those single-family homes a model of this net zero that GEOS and these other communities are envisioning, and we could further the cause. Our company did Solar Row about 5 years ago, where we really made an attempt to get to net zero homes and a series of townhomes, and these are actually right out in the Holiday neighborhood. And these are being monitored by NREL, and they can tell how many times people take a bath in their house. No, not yet. But these were, now they look like an early attempt, because we're seeing production builders now are beginning to do net zero by you build the house right so that it doesn't use much energy, and then you put enough solar collectors on it, you can call it net zero. Now, we learned a lot in this process, so the next step are these little houses that are on the park at Washington Village, which look like they're sweet little cottages along the park. When you really look at them, they're fairly long, but they're not huge houses. They're anywhere from 13 to 16 or 17 square feet, plus a 2-car garage off the alley. And then most of them have a little second-story element that might be a studio, could be a second master suite, but it's only 300 to 500 square feet. But then, and we'll flip up, then they have another 1,600 square feet potential in the basement that can be finished. And we're doing things like daylighting basements. So here we're starting to take the concept of building a more energy efficient, sustainable house with solar and all this stuff on, and looking at how does that relate to livability and to the emotional experience you get in living in the houses. So here in the traditional co-housing, here's the front porch right where all the neighbors are walking by. Every house has a private courtyard, so it has like an outdoor room that the house wraps around with a good south orientation. The houses have light being brought in high, especially from a south orientation, for a lot of daylighting. Like in this particular house, this is like an artist studio over the garage. So it's a more creative way to look at housing that starts to blend together. Go ahead. And then last, there's been a lot of participation going on. Those of you in Washington are all kind of cringing. These are really early slides. And you have to recognize that this is the kind of stuff that creates the glue that is community. But it isn't necessarily easy, and that's been our, when I first started with working with co-housing, I thought, oh, every builder is going to want to do this. And we're going to see a lot of these kind of communities because this is really the answer to building a better product and a more sustainable product. And then I realized that there wasn't that many people that really had the appetite for it. And a lot of it is that you have to get past this point that the only way you can be satisfied is by buying something or having somebody give you something. You have to actually participate. And participation does create that dopamine that makes it all work for us. So let me just conclude by saying, here's some of the things we've learned through co-housing the past 20 years about sustainability and community. So one of the things is working together and building community definitely has its challenges, but it yields rewards that are for everybody that are far in excess. I love this slide because this is when I was in Bellingham, Washington, at a community that we developed there, and this guy that lives up here built this thing in the shop, probably with the help with some of the other guys that knew a lot more about it. And then he couldn't figure out how it wouldn't go up the stairs and get in there. So he got the neighbors together. I don't know what this is. It looks like some rigged fishing line or something. And they all got together and hoisted this thing over the top so he could get it in through the door of the Now that's community in action. and the only thing you can say about it that it's not the most efficient way to do it, but they were sure having a hell of a good time with it. Okay, now the second thing that we've learned is that a participatory neighborhood where people actually work together with their neighborhood to make decisions. This is the Harmony community and having a community meeting out on their common lawn in the summertime. But that is what creates the social capital. You have to get involved with your neighbors. You can't just buy a new urbanist house. That'll get you part way there, but it won't get you all the way. Okay, and then this gets more into the emotional side of it. If you do it right, it really creates a difference in our well-being and everything from our health to how we feel about life. And this was a jam session when I was at Nevada City Co-housing last year. I think it was their Harvest Festival, and a bunch of musicians were sitting out there, and then other people talking. It was just great stuff happening. And the last one is, we've known this for years. Humans are social animals. The problem is that we've tried to buy our way out of it, and because there's certain downsides to being social, but we really are the happiest when we care together about the quality of our lives. The security, beauty, spirituality, it really makes a difference. So these are all the co-housing communities that I've been involved in, that our company has, and our sister company Co-housing Partners in California. And I did the ones in red. I guess you can see. Those are all in Boulder County. There's 5 of them. So there's either something in the water here in Boulder, or that it's not that crazy of an idea. So I hope I hope you got the message. and that's the end of our slideshow. This is kind of how we view our lot in life, to take people that are brave enough down the rabbit hole of community. So well, thank you.